Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast. It's Thursday, 20th of March, and it is just under a week from the culmination of the 2025 Cheltenham Festival. What a whirlwind of a week. It was a real roller coaster of emotions from a betting perspective and also from a story and human perspective as well. I have to say, I loved it. I had a great time attending. The punting was up and down, and it would be interesting to get the impressions of Ross Miller and TC, who were very hardworking with daily podcasts, which I know were very popular indeed. But the biggest outcome is how well the tipping had done. Ross, I know this is the week of the year from National Hunt fans. For you, how did it compare to other years, and how were the successes all in all?
Yeah, I mean, on P&L, Jess, it was one of the best years for a while at the Cheltenham Festival. But the way I punt is if lots of odds-on favourites wins and short price favourites win, I'm up against it. I mean, obviously, when the favourites aren't winning, you've still got to find the right one that's not favourite that goes in. But yeah, across the week, Wednesday was a bit dicey, but the rest of the week went pretty well. And finding some handicap winners always helps because they are generally bigger prices anyway.
Biggest success, biggest betting sort of satisfaction of the week? Something that you've been waiting for, or something at a good price?
It'd be hard to switch between Haiti Clares, who I was pretty sweet on from a long way out, and Cargizi, who I was hoping she'd go county, but there was talk of her dropping into the mares, and of course Lottie Mouth all played a part in that. So probably Cargizi was the financially most beneficial one of the week.
Yeah, it was a real day to remember for the Rebecca Curtis team for Hititi Kalua. I have to concur with that. I definitely loved that and so much more, and put him up as an anti-post selection. So I was really delighted to see that materialise. The New Lion, I just thought that was one of the most excellent rides and a great watching spectacle in the Turners. And I think that will be my moment of the week. But of course, Marie Nationale and Jazzy Matty, that will never be forgotten either. How significant it was with the passing of Michael O'Sullivan only a month ago. Tom, for you, great week. It's the week where you really lean into jump racing. There were a few spicy conversations that we had on this podcast for the Cheltenham preview. One was, I think it was about Ballyburn's jumping, whether we thought he was going to actually show up and produce what he could do. That went to tatters. Factor File, we had a few edgy words about as well. He showed what he was really capable of. So there was plenty that came out of it. How did you find it all in all? And were your thoughts, did they come true, or did some surprise you?
A bit of both, to be fair, Jess. It would be very arrogant to myself to say that everything came true, because it didn't. There were quite a lot of shock results, but equally, I think some takes that we had on the podcast and on the daily pods as well came to fruition when other punters and analysts maybe didn't come down on that side of things. Ballyburn was probably the biggest disappointment of the week. I saw Ross say that in his Miller's Movers piece as well. Constitution Hill was the one that maybe we definitely got wrong, because we said that this horse couldn't be beaten. But equally, if he stood up, then he probably wouldn't have been beaten. So it's a difficult one. From a personal perspective, it was a good week. Tuesday and Wednesday specifically were good. Friday, not as much. So kind of ended on a low note for myself. And then moving into Saturday, both of my tips finished second. So it kind of put a dampener on the week. But that being said, I really enjoyed it from a viewing spectacle. There were lots of shocks, lots of surprises, lots of drama. And that's kind of what we want in horse racing.
Yeah, you can't always get it right. And I think actually, I have to say Galopin Des Champs, I couldn't see that get beat, and that was beat fair and square. Constitution Hill was very much a case of what would have been had he stood up, whereas Galopin Des Champs, no excuses. He just was flat as a pancake. If you had said to any of us that John Bond, Galopin Des Champs, Constitution Hill would all have been beaten, like some Madgeborough and Ballyburn, we would have been saying that you're absolutely crazy. But that's horse racing, and that's why we love it, and that's why we come back year after year, weekend after weekend, which is what we'll be doing as we preview this Saturday's action. Quite a low-key weekend, obviously, a bit of a Cheltenham hangover, I suppose, and want to save a good few horses to some other spring targets, with Aintree not too far away as well. But we do have races racing at Newbury this Saturday, and also Kelso, and that's what we're going to focus on. There's a big handicap chase at Newbury at 240. We're going to start with that first of all. An old friend of the podcast recently ran a very good race at Newbury. Sansegal is 3-1 favourite for this. We got Risk in the Ground at 7-1, as is Scarface and Theatre Man. Bob Ricard, I should say, 8-1. Matterhorn 8-1. Bigger prices, the rest of them. I'm going to say that it was TC that put up Sansegal. I need a nod. Yes, that was well remembered. And he was a horse that ran an absolute blinder where we collectively, between yourself and Ross, put up the 1, 2, 3 of that race. He comes back into this TC of the same rating. Do you think that gives him an obvious chance to justify favouritism?
Well, of course it does. Yeah, he's treated to win, but he had a very hard race in that Great Wood Gold Cup. He was always up with the speed, and the horses that were up with the pace that day, they didn't really last out. He was the only one that managed to sustain his effort from start to finish. The winner came from, definitely last, tailed off at one point. The runner-up was always there or thereabouts, I suppose. But Sansegal made a big move at the top of the straight and burnt off several of them before just clinging on for third. It looked like he was going to win for much of that contest, and look, there are two reasons why I'm not with him here. One, you never know how much that's going to take out of a horse, especially when they really go 100% and dig deep into the well and then try to come back just a short period later. And two, I'm just not the most loyal of punters. I don't really have a desire to stick with horses time after time unless they've been really unlucky or they're a decent price. Now, Sansegal in that Great Wood Gold Cup was around 10-1. You're only going to get 3-1, maybe even shorter by the off in this race on Saturday. So I don't really want him. He could win this race and it would be absolutely fine. I'm happy to let him beat me, but I'll try to find one at a price instead. Unfortunately, this race has cut up since the declaration stage, with Cheltenham, who won the race for the last 2 years, being taken out. Buxy de Eperet also not in there. King's Threshold going to another race on the card. So it's kind of cut up a bit. And that's got rid of a couple of the angles I had. But I'm going to side with Bob Ricard in here for John Joe and AJ O'Neill. I think the price is fair, around 8 or 9-1, whatever he is at the time of recording. This gelding has 3 wins and 4 places from 10 starts on good ground, which I think is key. Obviously, that's why the race is cut up, not only the proximity due to the Cheltenham Festival, but also the conditions outside. As you say, it's hot out there, fast ground. But Bob Ricard will definitely get the conditions that he wants. He's a good jumper. I thought his performance last time was solid in a small field. He came through late in a race that probably wasn't run to suit. And he steps up in distance, which I think is the big key for him. He's off a nice racing weight as well, 10-5. So I'll take Bob Ricard, but I have to admit, this isn't a race that I'd be overly keen to punt in, let alone watch.
Yeah, he's 8-1 shout, and there's sort of a bit of a much for muchness when it comes to prices. I think it's very short for Sansegal at 3-1, and then sort of offering you a decent value for much of the rest. Bob Ricard on a rating of 122, just up £2 for that victory last time, off the back of a good break. They obviously desperately need him to be running on this decent, good ground surface. Currently good to soft. Bit of rain around this weekend. I doubt it's going to make too much of a difference, but Ross, it's very much changing of the seasons. It's better ground, horses that really sort of come to life in the springtime, and possibly been waited with for this. Are you in agreement with TC here that there is a bit of price value around with Sansegal being so short?
Yeah, I think there is, because Sansegal, I want to take him on the fact that he's not always the most reliable of conveyance across a fence. So a short price gives you the heebie-jeebies about that. And I think when he's on quicker ground, going quicker again, I think that can get his jumping at a risk. So there is a bit of value, but if any of these win it, you wouldn't fall down in shock, would you? I mean, Risk in the Ground is starting to look well handicapped. Theatre Man has had a wind up. I mean, he's incredibly well handicapped on his best form if a first-time wind up puts it together. Baloo, I don't know what's happened to him. I thought he looked like a really promising young horse last year as a hurdler going into chasing. Jumped well in his chase debut, didn't jump very well next time. They've gone back hurdles and it's been a mess. He's pulled up the last couple of times. And imagine, well, I mean, you can only imagine what they're feeling about him, a big money purchase, and it's just absolutely not worked out. But Caldwell Potter showed last, at Cheltenham, if you can get them well enough handicapped and you're patient enough, you can bring them back. He goes first time cheap pieces this time, but I'm very mindful of the fact that when he made his debut, and I think it was the Paddy Power Gold Cup or the December Gold Cup, Harry Derham was berating himself afterwards for running him on quick ground. Said he's a soft ground horse. So quite what he's doing here over this trip on this ground, I don't know. So I like Bob Ricard. I thought he was the first horse beat at Doncaster last time, over 2 miles, and it was his stamina that got him there, and he jumped well over the last couple of fences. this step up in trip is clearly going to suit, as is the ground, and his jumping has come together. And the fact he's jumped well over 2 miles should mean in a better grade of race, his jumping should pass the test. But the big concern, and I really struggle with this yard continuing, I've mentioned it before, but they're 3% winners to runners for the last 14 days. 1 from 31. Their last winner was 12 days ago, 22 runs ago. And then you look and say, okay, are they hitting the frame? Not really. A lot of them are struggling to beat anything home. So that concerns me. But we've seen it before with this yard that they're so streaky, they can go on a bad run and then straight away they're on the hot list. So I'll take a chance with him, but I'll split my stakes. And I would say at this time of year, as the ground changes, I become very conservative with my staking, because I think you'll see big turnarounds in form. Horses that have been running on winter ground cannot reproduce it on better ground, as we saw with Gallop into Shops, I think, to a degree. So I'd also take Scarface as well. He's been largely consistent, and we know he likes this better ground. I mean, you look at his run at Ascot, he was staying on behind Le Patron. Le Patron is a 150 horse. Then he bumped into Cottmask at Newbury. Even when he was fourth at this track, or Ascot, sorry, in January, he's behind 7 lengths behind Teresita. She's now £8 higher. 2 lengths behind Phlegmatic. He's now 134. He ran really well for TC last week and probably should have been the moral victor. I don't quite understand how he got beat. So if you said that it was soft ground last time at this track, and the fact he made a very bad mistake, put him on the back foot, I'd be prepared to forgive that. He's on a mark of 129, so he is £1 lower. He's on his lowest mark of the season, despite running consistently. Tizard Yard going along quite well. So I'd take him each way and Bob Rickard each way and split my stakes, but they'd be pretty small stakes, I have to say, in a race like this.
The Scarface is a really interesting one, because I think this time last year, when he got on to a bit of a roll, he looked like a horse that could really punch into a good class and even be more than a mid 130s horse, but maybe that just wasn't the case. And now he's back down to a more attractive mark. He'll sort of find his level. But the Tizard team in good form, considering they only had a handful of runners at Cheltenham. They had two good seconds, the Changing Man being one of them. Joe Tizard's just been very punchy about how his horses are, with plenty more to run going into this spring season. So we have a few selections here. We've got a shared opinion here on Bob Ricard from TC and Ross, so that's at 8-1, and a bit of Scarface as well, who's a little bit shorter at the moment, 7-1. Let's move on to the Herring Queen Mares Novices Handicap Hurdle. There's racing up at Kelso. They've good money on offer as well, 100 grand up for offer, and fair credit to Kelso. They're probably competing with Cheltenham from last week when it comes to prize money. So I think hats off to them. They've got plenty of runners, well supported. You've got 12 runners for this Mares Novices Handicap Hurdle. And, these are the kind of mares, really, if you look at this race, they're probably deserve to be in that grade 2 at Newbury, considering their ratings, but they go up for prize money, which is always important. And Northern Air is 92 from Surrey Bell at 5-1, while Cadena is 6-1, Game Colours 7s, Barrable 8-1, as is Rula Bula and Tour Oval 9-1, bigger prices. The rest of them, I'm going to start with TC first, because I know who you're putting up, and this is a horse who I just can't work out. I have seen her run at Ludlow and Wincanton this season, and I can't quite work out why she hasn't been producing the form that potentially they know that she's got. She's back off wind surgery for the second time now. You can tell us a bit more, but there's a horse in here that's just becoming a little bit frustrating, but you like her.
Yeah, I do. Walkadena is the horse you're talking about for David Pipe and Jack Tudor. Again, I thought this race was super tough. The ground is going to be key here. The going stick reading, I believe, on Thursday morning is 6.4, and the ground is listed as good. It looks like the weather is very hot for the time of year. On Thursday, Friday's going to be dry, and then Saturday there is some rain. But I anticipate this is going to be good ground, good to soft at worst. So I was looking for a horse that would handle fast conditions, and Walkadena is the obvious one. Now, if you go back earlier in this year, she ran at Uttoxeter in November, earlier this season, I should have said, not year. She ran at Uttoxeter in November, and she beat a horse called Sunset Marquesa, who you'll talk about later, I believe, by 13 lengths on good ground. And she did it really emphatically off the front, showed a high cruising speed, kicked clear, good acceleration, and jumped really with aplomb throughout the whole race. And I thought she was pretty impressive that day. Obviously, Sunset Marquez has come back and won 2 of her subsequent 3 outings. The third place finisher there, who was absolutely stuffed way back in the field, was Irish Chorus, who should have won recently in the last week or so, but fell at the last with the race at her mercy. So the form is working out relatively strong for the level of race it was. Now, Walkadena has been disappointing since, there is no doubt about it. And I completely agree with what you said insofar as why is she not performing to a higher level than what we saw back in November. But I'm just thinking maybe second run back after wind surgery on the ground that she wants in a race where she could dominate from the front. She could produce a better display here. Again, it is a little bit of guesswork purely because I thought this race was super tough and it's hard to be that convincing about any of these runners in here. It's a competitive and good race, but a tough race. And then finally, I thought I'll add in a little bit of a stat attack because we haven't had one for a while. David Pipe has a 23% strike rate at Kelso in his whole training career, 3 from 13. That is with hurdlers only, which I thought was interesting because he obviously doesn't send too many horses up there. It's a long trip to go up to Kelso, but with the limited runners he's had good success. I know some people will say 3 from 13, well, that's not good, but 23% is good, I promise you. So yeah, Walkadena is going to be my play in what is another very tricky affair.
Yeah, and considering that if you are going to send a horse up to Kelso, you'd probably want to share the cost and try and find another horse to take in the lorry with you. It's the only horse that the David Pike team are sending up to Kelso, and that's a long way from where they're based in Devon. So good luck to them. They obviously, I think that they found a good opportunity for Walkadena to prove me wrong. And I will admit that if she does do you good, TC. Ross, what do you think about this race? How this is shaped up? TC says it's pretty tough. I would agree. I think there's angles to be had for plenty of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is a tough race. Decent sized field. I mean, yes, it is a drop in class from Cheltenham this weekend, but there's some pretty competitive racing. And one of the constant frustrations to me is you've got Go North finals up north. Really nice qualifying series for owners of lower grade horses throughout the season. It just doesn't get a mention in the mainstream racing press. It drives me absolute distraction. Mayor's Series finals as well. And there'll be a few of these coming up in the next few weeks. And I wish racing would do more about promoting it because I think it helps gravitate you towards the runners. In this, I completely agree with TC's assessment. I did like Walkadena, but I've gone one at a bigger price. And I don't understand why she's the price she is. I have a suspicion it's because she's owner, trainer, connection, trained by the owner and owned by the trainer, and it's a sorter. She only had one start in the UK, and that was a win at Catterick. She beat, or Magical Annie came down at the last on her hurdling debut. She was 1-16 on. That tells you the calibre of horse Magical Annie is seen as. And when you look at her bumper form, her bumper win came at Wetherby. She beat Metcaina. Now, Metcaina is 130 rated. Yes, it's dangerous to take bumper form and hurdle form and mix them together, but she's clearly a talented horse. And I actually then remembered I'd messaged Keelan Woods, who was on Magical Annie, and just said, "You're right, that was a nasty fall." And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to get pelters for it on social media but I felt I had to ask her to come up because I just wasn't convinced I had the runner up at the time and the winner eventually completely put away." A sorter's drop from 119 down to 116 for winning a race. That doesn't happen very often. It's happened because the handicap has taken the view that the 119 he gave her, which was done on the calculation of a French rating on import, was too high. She's come down £3. Emma Smith-Chatterton takes off another £3. She is not a top class jockey, but I think she's good value for a £3. And when you then look back at the Moor Battle weekend at Kelso, the big handicaps there were dominated by northern jockeys. I think Kelso is a track that takes a little bit of knowing. Emma Smith-Chatterton will have ridden around this a fair bit more than a lot of the southern jockeys in this. And I just think because it's, as I said, trained by a small trainer who owns, she's got 6 horses in training, she owns 4 of them. The other 2, interestingly enough, are owned by a Miss Chatterton, who I imagine is a link to Emma Smith-Chatterton, the jockey. I just think she's overpriced at 16-1. Her French form suggests that this mark is tough enough, actually, when you dig into it. But she just looked like she loved the quick ground at Catterick last time. She was finishing with a real flourish. She had her head down. She was going full guns for it. This stiffer track at Kelso might suit as well on lightly ground. So I'll take a bit of a swing at her.
Really interesting that. I don't know a huge amount about Paula Smith, so it's good to get more about it and to obviously, sing her praises, because this interesting buy, this Asorda, comes from the Gabrielle Leander's Academy, who's responsible for the likes of Gold Tweet, and she's well bred. She's obviously a interesting individual, and it's just a case of the handicapper not really knowing where to place her. And actually, we saw with the French handicap, it's very different with the handicap system. We saw last week a prime example of them getting it totally wrong with Copet Demi. We all thought that this horse was going to be very well handicapped. It actually looked like or substantially handicapped. It all didn't go according to plan at all with that horse. But I saw a horse of real interest and confidence from Ross. So this is a race where you can get involved with a little bit of value around. So that horse is 14-1. Don't mind that. And probably likely that it is a connections thing, but we've got a good reason behind it here. Okay, that's the Herring Queen Mares Novice Handicap Hurdle coming up at Kelso on Saturday. We've got plenty more, as Ross mentioned, that we can offer you there at Kelso. So we'll go to NAPs and next bests. We'll start with Ross, see what you picked out. Potentially you've had a look on at the other races on that card.
Yeah, I mean, there's good racing at Bangor. There's obviously Newbury as well, but I like the card at Kelso. I would say I think it's a really tricky weekend to have naps and next best. When you're saying that I'm pretty confident about these, because these are tentative selections. I would sort of caveat as, but the nap is in the 1:15. It's Dare to Shout. He's yet to race over this far. And there is an argument that he's not been particularly strong over 2 miles, 7.5 furlongs. It was the last twice. But the drying ground will definitely help. And there's just two lines of form that I just think I don't want to ignore. And they're both behind Lucinda Russell horses. In December, 3 miles at this track, he was 3.25 lengths behind the Whistle Stop Tour, giving that horse £8. Whistle Stop Tour is now rated 136, is a progressive young horse. And then in February, he was 9.5 lengths behind Mayertown, giving him £10. Now, Mayertown was a comfortable winner on that occasion, but he took apart the Ultima, which is one of the most competitive handicaps of the season. He won it in emphatic style last week. I think those are strong lines of form. Dare to Shout won't mind this better ground, and if that helps him just conserve a little bit of energy, the stamina is the issue over 3 mile 2. But I think he'll be a bit of a price, and I just think there's some form there that suggests he could well land this. And then the next best, the 3:35. This is a horse that's featured a few times. I have left him alone this season. It's Bollinger and Krug. He has looked regressive. He's without winning 7 starts. His last win came in November 23, but that was off a mark of 121. He then went up £4 to that to 125. He's had to work his way down, and there's no doubt that the first 3 or 4 runs of that 7-run sequence, he wasn't putting his best foot forward. They were trying to get him to a more attractive handicap mark. They moved him away from Kelso, which is his bread and butter. He hasn't fared an awful lot better, particularly last time. He was never really in a class 3. But he drops into a class 4 off a mark of 109. And if you just look at his penultimate start, which was over course and distance, he gets a £7 pull with Gold de Bois for 5 lengths. In this lower grade, if he can get to the front and dominate, that's when he's at his best. He hasn't been able to do that in a better class of race throughout the last 7 runs. It's a bit of a what if, because he could just be regressive. He's 10 years old now. He might just have, having had that fairly hard running style of going hard off the front, that might have taken its toll. But I will give him one more chance in what I think is a winnable race at 3:35.
Okay, thank you for that. We've got Dare to Shout in the 1:15 and Bollinger and Krug in the 3:35 for Ross. TC, what do you like? You've said that this is a bit tricky, but there is some flat racing for you as well. I didn't think it was the best competition at Wolverhampton on Saturday, but you might have something for us.
Yeah, I agree with what Ross said about having Nap and Next Best. They are not really Nap and Next Best, just 2 horses, I presume. Not talking for both of you, but 2 horses that we just like in other races rather than I'm pretty sure this is going to win. My nap is going to be Javert Alain, who runs in the 5 o'clock at Newbury, sticking with the jumps for the nap, the flat with the Next Best. This race just hasn't come up strong at all. I think you can easily scrap off the bottom 3 on the race card, leaving just the top 3. Then you've got Bo Balco, who's had a very tough season. He seems to be running every single week. Consistent, but he's obviously under the grip of the handicapper right now. Then you've got Teddy Blue, who's won his last two and seems to be rejuvenated, but he carries a big weight, and just 7 days after his most recent effort, he's not the easiest of rides, and he's 0 from 7 off marks of 130 or higher, so I wanted to oppose him. And Javert Alain is the only other option. He's a course and distance winner, 2 from 3 this year, arguably should be 3 from 3, but he just got chinned on the wire at Chepstow last time. He's a bold jumper, he's the only front runner in the field, I think he just makes all. So Javert Alain is going to be my nap in the 5 o'clock at Newbury. My next best is on the all-weather, as I say, at Wolverhampton. And this is going to be Party Bear, who runs in the 7 o'clock. This filly didn't show much in 3 turf outings last year, but they all came in sprints on soft ground at the start of the campaign. She had a month between each run. It just looked like they were campaigning her for a handicap mark. She then took off the autumn, didn't run again, came back in January at Wolverhampton over 6 furlongs and ran a really good second, actually, beaten a neck by one of Jamie Osborne's. But she was drawn out wide in that race. She had to make a big early move wide on the track around the turn to get into a forward position. She covered a lot of ground and she only went down fighting in the latter stages. One more stride, she would have won the race as well. Now she steps up a distance, 7 furlongs. She draws gate 3, which is way better than she had last time. And crucially, most of her opposition that have a chance in this race are drawn wide. If you don't watch much all-weather racing, which I presume most people don't during this time of year, judged by the comments, 7 furlongs at Wolverhampton, the stalls are literally on the turn. So if you're drawn wide, it is the worst place to be. If you're drawn inside, you can save ground, get into a good spot, and then kick in the home straight. And hopefully that'll be the scenario for Party Bear, who is the next best in the 7 o'clock at Wolves.
Well, I think I've been at Wolverhampton more than I've been most places over the last couple of months. I know it well. It's a local track to me nowadays. So Party Bear, let's see if that horse can do well for you there, TC, I should say, in the 7 o'clock at Wolves. We've got Javert Alain as the nap, I say tentative. And I would say that would probably be similar approach that I've taken. They're just a couple of horses that I'm interested in. And I think that maybe it might be a weekend where you just follow and watch, don't need to get too closely involved. We've got plenty left to come up and you probably enjoyed your Cheltenham as well, but I want to see how Teddy Blue gets on in the 5 o'clock at Newbury. Harry Derham has done well with him since he left the Moore team. He previously in a former life was a Sussex national winner, and he's a horse that he's sort of come a long way and he's done plenty, and then he's sort of lost his way a little bit. They have added blinkers on him, and on his penultimate run he was under Paul O'Brien and won nicely and comfortably at Huntingdon. He then went to Kempton under Brendan Powell, and if you watch the race, Brendan had an absolute nightmare with him. Getting him down to the start was a nightmare. He was pretty detached and looked like he wasn't going to participate at all. But then when he swung around the bend, he actually sort of saw home and got back into it, and he got up and won quite convincingly. Now, many would probably say he's a bit ungamely, but I think that reading Brendan's comments and listening to him, he said he takes a good bit of knowing. And Paul O'Brien being back on board on Saturday should be a real benefit. So I think that he could continue on his trajectory. This is a tougher race without being anything of huge amount of concern. You've got the likes of Bo Balco in here and Javert Alain who have decent enough form, but I'm keen to see how Teddy Blue fares. And then I'm going to go into this Mares final. It's a limited handicap, the grade 2 at 3:15 at Newbury on Saturday, where I'd imagine Harry Derham might be very confident around Jasmine Bliss, and it could be a good day for him in general. But this race has had thrown up a few shocks in the past, and we talked about Sunset Marquesa earlier in context of Walcadena for TC. This horse has good form behind her. She might just be a bit of a query around the trip. She's by Walk in the Park. She does have a bit of stamina on her dam side, but she's yet to be proven over this distance as she's not tried it. She did have one bad run at Newbury back in December. I'd say draw a line through that. That just wasn't her at all. She showed what she could do at Fosslas back in February. They've given a bit of time in between races. She's just it might be at a bit of an each way angle for me in that Mares final in a race where, as I said, has been a few surprises. So because it's a handicap, the horses that are sort of rated a little bit lower are probably ones that you should keep an eye on, trying to get that valuable black type on there back type on their CV. Okay, that is a good look at all the racing this weekend. All the best of it. Hopefully we found a couple more winners, but just enjoy it regardless if you're just watching for a bit of fun. We do have an offer for you this weekend. It's a 20% Saturday Racing ACCA boost. So you've got to get 4 legs and you have to opt in, and hopefully we have some options for you there. Before we go, want to let you know that all new SBK users get £30 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. You can head to SBK for lots of other offers and promotions. You can also listen to this very podcast on the app itself. Just make your way to the horse racing page and click play. Thanks to Ross and to TC. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.